families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Families Divided. In this episode, Dr. Colleen Murray sits down with Dr. Mark David Roseman and discusses his book, Preserving Family Ties.
Hello, and welcome to this month's panel of Families Divided. This month, we're going to be talking to Dr. Mark Roseman about his book, Preserving Family Ties, an authoritative guide to understanding divorce and child custody for parents and family professionals. Hi, Dr. Roseman. How are you today?
Hello, Colleen. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. Grateful to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. And can I call you Mark?
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. So, a lot of times when people come to read some material or they watch somebody on a program and it's about a very specific niche, such as parental alienation, people are always interested in, like, what's the backstory? Kind of what brought you here? And so I'll ask you that question. What brought you into the field of parental alienation?
And for me, it's as you would find every parent who feels that they are suffering as what is referred to as a targeted parent. When children have abandoned you psychologically, physically, emotionally, socially, they you are at such a tremendous loss. And if you are engaged in the litigation process, which I was 25 years ago, then you look at what is happening in the court that is accelerating or solidifying that distance between you and your children when you feel that it's in their best interest to continue a normal relationship. What has happened to you? And so that search for the understanding of what happened to me, what has happened to them, brought me into seeking that answer that has committed me into the rest of my life of serving the parents.
So this was something that started out as a personal experience that you've turned into a professional journey.
Exactly.
That's amazing. And tell me, what led you to write this book? Like, what brought you to, that far along?
Thank you. When I was after nearly 2 years of litigation and trying to compel the other party, my former wife, to having forensics and evaluations, which are very much cookie cutter approaches to dealing with high conflict, I was becoming very sad, very angry, very frustrated. And I wanted to kill myself. And I expressed that to my sister, who was completing her doctorate in psychology. And she said, how about an alternative? How about making a difference for other people? And so I, having at that time been a financial advisor, realizing that no longer had any interest to me, and I really wanted to give up on life, she come to a seminar with me, and I did. It was in New Mexico and Santa Fe, and what could be more inspiring than to be in Santa Fe, New Mexico? And I applied for my PhD candidacy. In my doctoral work and my research, I wanted to look at what we know about family change, what we know about child outcomes. And I wrote this book as a consequence of my doctoral literature review and research, as well as what's become much of my life's work. And I wanted people who might be in litigation to be able to look at the fundamental research across disciplines and use it in their litigation in this way. Why wait for judges and attorneys to go to professional seminars and to go online in webinars and get their CEUs, when where they really need to see it and apply it is in the courtroom, because that's where the decisions are being made, whether you're pro se or whether you are represented by counsel. If you apply the research, it becomes much more dramatic, because they can look at how your case can best be referenced within and from that research. And that will, I believe, provide far more efficient and more effective court orders for final judgments on visitation, on child access, but certainly in high conflict situations, for the judges to really see what is going on and the impact that decisions can have on families for generations.
Yeah. So a lot of the information that that is in the book fell out of your own dissertation. I think as some people read through it, I think they're going to find that some of the state of affairs, if you will, of the court and custody evaluators and other professionals, I think they're going to be shocked. Were you shocked? I mean, you were experiencing it, but then were you shocked when you started to dig into it, regards to the numbers and to just the general sense in the courtroom?
Yes, I was shocked by the extent. I was shocked by the negative outcomes that children show, and I saw that the interventions can be so accessible and yet remain absent from the courts, and that was the most shocking. That these that have the opportunities as court judges, as magistrates, as guardian ad litems, as court social workers and social service staff, they have the power and they have the ability to help improve outcomes. Sadly,
Yes. So
use that power.
yeah, so they don't use that power as they should. Do you think it's they don't use the power as they should, or they don't use the power as they could?
Next question. Quite honestly, that is so perfect, because we know that, as evidenced by several really fine documentaries, as Erasing Family, as the Divorce Corp, and others, we know that there are so many in the legal system who really care more about money, income for themselves in providing services, than they do about the outcomes for children. And so I believe that if those are two stories that present themselves in every case. But if we manage those, no one should be begrudged income. But if you can earn a living by helping instead of earning a living by bleeding,
Yes.
terrorizing, we can help change that I believe.
Yeah, so I know that you are in the process of updating this book, and so, what ways do you think things have gotten better since you first wrote the book?
Thank you. I would first answer that by saying that advocates
Mhm.
become emboldened to be part of existing systems
Mm.
through legislative activities as well as through petitions and uh, and making personal appearances and providing testimony and meeting uh, people engaged in the legislative process by connecting with school systems that
Mm.
see children far longer in the day than parents do. And if
Sure.
you can connect in improving the legislation for shared parenting, which we have seen in the last 5 years, for sure, that is really remarkable. In the last several years, these considerations and efforts have been replicated internationally.
Hmm.
And if we collectively, as a um, as a community of man,
Hmm.
can become more empowering as a source of change, and that's what is happening now.
So what I hear you saying is that there's more involvement. People are starting to understand some things. There's pockets, but these pockets are actually turning into bigger communities, and they're really starting to push forward with the advocacies and the therapies that are needed. And but there still is more work to be done.
Oh, there absolutely is. When I first started my doctorate, at the same time, I found a blessed man in the name of David Levy. And David, I always refer to as what others have called him, the king of joint custody. It was David, who was an attorney, who
Hmm.
really sought to bring the message and the research of shared parenting, what that would do positively for children. And so I worked with him in Washington at the Children's Rights Council to help other states understand that role and to help them look at legislative opportunities. And I accompanied David to multiple states where he gave testimony, where I supplemented that testimony. And now there are 37 states that do have shared parenting laws, although many of those states, well, they all differ in their approaches.
Mhm.
That
Right.
still means that there are 13 states that do not have shared parenting, and but they didn't 25 years ago. They
Right.
now. And that is really key. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's an important piece. I know in my work, that's a really important piece is to get everybody on the same page and set the expectation. And then, you can do more than, but don't do less than. Instead of, uh, and when I was reading in your book, and then I went and looked it up for some other things that I was doing, I saw that everybody may have shared parenting, but the definition of parenting and shared can be a very fluid conversation in some states. Yeah, I see that that's something that continues to need to be improved upon. And in that vein, there, what are some things that you think still need to change besides the legislative part that are really pressing needs of families in these high conflict cases?
and I think if we look at what are the uh, problems that courts still face, uh, first of all, cases continue to return. Pardon me. They still continue to return
Mm,
to the courts, and
sure.
that overloads the courts. It aggravates the judges who have more cases that they have to adjudicate. And they also get tired of seeing the same people unable to resolve their their most immediate problems. And it's generally centered around custody of children and vacation and parenting times and the co-parenting fabrics. So that needs to be identified. I think we also, for the courts to best serve, they need to have a filtering mechanism. And I speak about that in my book in the appendix, where we look at court reform and alternatives that are suggested alternatives. Courts can introduce in a piecemeal fashion, in a modular form. But one of the things is to identify what are those high conflict cases that are sending red flags that will allow the court to segregate them from other cases. And I think if you have a two-court system, if you would, one which handles high conflict, which is only 30% of the cases, but that's a heck of a lot of cases,
right?
And which are much more more easily resolved situations, and you're dealing more with the emotional assistance and maybe the lack of understanding of how best to schedule shared parenting, come up with parenting plans. And so mediation should be much more provided to those cases. Mediators, far less expensively and far more compassionately, because I am a mediator. I studied mediation. I did mediation. I will tell you, it is not a panacea for everything, but it is for those 70% of cases who don't agree to disagree, by default or by statement. They want help, and so they can be helped. And I think if we give mediators more skills, because they don't have enough skills in dealing with particularly the challenges that the parents do have. But
when I was
filtered.
When I was reading that section of the book, I was thinking about drug courts, right, and how we've segregated those out of the court system, and that has really, like you said, it's lifted the burden off the courts, and it's really helped to move this specific population in a positive direction. And so I was thinking about that while I was reading that part of your book, and I was thinking this is a fantastic idea, because I agree with you. A lot of times, when I have clients come, I say to them, people can say finances or whatever are the reasons for the multiple divorces, but I think it's communication, because I think if you have good communication, you're not going to have a divorce, because you're not going to have financial issues and affairs and whatever else, because you're going to be able to communicate. And so if you take two people that can't communicate, and then somehow you expect them to communicate well about a long-term contract that neither one of them are familiar with the language, neither one of them, feel like they should be giving up anything. I think that the idea of a mediator absolutely is a great idea. I know here in Missouri we do a special masters thing, but it's not a real robust. I don't think there's very many of them, maybe, because I see a lot of cases that I think could have been resolved if they had A, gotten some help with some communication, and then B, went to mediators. Because as mediators are good, as you know, you can't carry the water for the whole conversation. Like, the two other people need to talk.
The idea of the drug court was so fascinating. And I participated in drug court meetings in Broward County, Florida, because it was Broward which really introduced the drug. Actually, it was Miami-Dade that introduced the drug court, and also the unified court. We'd have one judge that would follow a case through its conclusion. Now, that ain't the case, for most people. You've got rotating judges. But with respect to a drug court, there's compassion. There's I have a mantra: acknowledgement, recognition, and support. Acknowledge what is. Don't deny it. Don't cover it up. Acknowledge, because with that acknowledgement of what is, emotionally, practically, what your circumstances may be, if you acknowledge it all, it makes it so much easier to navigate through change. And then recognize where you would prefer to be. And then with support, you have a better than 90% chance of achieving those changes that you would like to make, or that you feel are important for you. The drug court has the compassion and has the sensibility. Not only that, if you think about it, in Florida, we have what's called juvenile court. In other courts, they call it dependency court. What happens is that where you have child welfare cases, the aim of that court is for reunification.
Right.
Right? They want reunified, the reunification of children and parents. In family court, it is like I and many others say, it's like the Roman Colosseum. Let's see how much blood we can shed in a shorter period of time. If we took family court with the same goal of reunification, of family strengthening, of recognizing that we want better outcomes for our children, we want to be healthy, we want mental health of all parties to be the best, not the worst. We want them to be strong, not weak. We want them to be focused and positive, not negative. Then we will have better outcomes for everybody. But I think that shows there's so much that needs to be done on a legislative basis, on an advocacy basis, by having a common goal. Because what we find, Colleen, is that research shows that court decisions for child custody are going to affect the family positively or negatively up to 150 years. That's 6 generations. If judges had that on their mind when they were officiating in a court on a court case, I think that if they had a sense of consciousness and compassion and that wherewithal, that understanding, they would make far better decisions. But that's not the way.
Sure. Sure. I understand. I've seen it myself, where you have family court, and family court looks a lot like criminal court, but it shouldn't. And I agree, it probably should look more like juvenile court. More in that reunification, compassion that I see a lot of when I worked for Children's Division, and when I've worked with children that are in the foster care system. So I agree with you on that. As we wrap up here, tell me, what is something you want our audience to walk away from this, and also where can they find your book?
Life is not set in stone. Life, no matter how oppressive a society we may live in, does offer some opportunities for choice. And I would say, choose life, choose to live, and choose to make a difference for you and for those you love and those who are part of your community. If you are engaged in litigation, and I know the oppressive talents, the GALs that are appointed by the court, so narrow-minded, don't have training in child development, and attorneys also that really don't care except to represent the best interests of their client, which is not the best interests of the child necessarily. You can use resources as my book, Preserving Family Ties, other books, attend seminars, go to webinars, attend conferences, get on Elaine's call monthly and more frequently. Find the material that resonates with you, that you can in your own circumstances, and certainly to make you a more aware, a more knowledgeable person. And I think that do not neglect your own life. You may not be have the relationship you want with your children. Don't make your life all about finding that perfect relationship with your children. What you need to do is find fulfillment in your life and be all you can be and want to be, because then you will be an example to your children of resilience.
So be your own best advocate. And as they tell you on the airplane, put your mask on first before you try to help anybody else.
That is it. Perfect. Perfect.
Where can we find your book, Mark? Anybody that's interested in getting a copy of Preserving Family Ties, where can they get that?
Thank you. They will get information and a lot of free pages, by the way, on our website, preservingfamilyties.com. You may find it in the local Barnes and Noble. You certainly can find it on Amazon as well.
Okay, great. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time out today to talk to us about your book and your thoughts about this parental alienation. Thank you for joining us, and we'll hope to have you back soon. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed our time here. We've been talking with Dr. Mark Roseman about his book, Preserving Family Ties, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, and good night.
In our next week's episode, Dr. Bita Tebyani presents Healing a Family's Transgenerational Trauma Through Clinical Interventions. Family Access, Fighting for Children's Rights, has 2 important email addresses you can use to reach us to request prayer for your family, or to suggest a subject matter you would like to see covered on the Families Divided TV program. To request prayer for your family, please email us at prayersforfamilies@gmail.com. Is there a subject you would like covered on Families Divided? If so, send your email to requestsforfamiliesdivided@gmail.com. We are here to help you in your journey.